We're going to learn how to use animation to guide our simulation. Jumping back to the example that we just completed, what if we wanted the bowling ball to follow a specific path and strike the pins? How could we achieve something like that? Well, we could do that with the help of animation. You see, whenever your objects are active rigid bodies, they're being controlled by the physics solver. But whenever they're passive, we can actually control them with the help of animation. So what this basically means is we can take passive rigid bodies and animate them, and any active objects that happen to be in their path will end up getting struck or pushed away. So let's take a look at this in practice. Make sure that your physics solver is turned off, and before you turn it off, hopefully you've reset it to the start state. If you have any issues, you can always reopen the ending file from the last lesson, or if you happen to be working with the same session, just make sure you reset to start and turn it off. So make sure your solver is turned off. Go to your physical properties for your rigid body bowling ball. In here, take the activation parameter and change it from active to passive. Now that the bowling ball has now become a passive rigid body, we can actually control it with the help of animation. So let's put some crazy keys on here. Grab the bowling ball, and at the first frame just tap the K key to put a nice translate keyframe for it. Let's move forward in time, maybe to about frame 30. Pull the ball forward in space and maybe raise it up a little bit like so. And now tap the K key to put another keyframe on here. Rewind and play. Here's the animation that we got going on. So that's pretty cool. And now, since it's passive and it's animated, we can use this as part of our simulation result. Let's go to our physics solver, and before you turn the solver on, make sure that your ball has been reset to the starting point of the animation. The reason for this is because that'll be used as part of the start state. So make sure you rewind and then turn it on. That way your start state will be the first point of the animation as opposed to something later. Alright, now that we have that going on, we can turn on live and nothing's going to happen. That's because all of these are passive, but the moment we click on the play button, the animation will kick in for any passive object, and the passive object will move and it'll be able to strike any active objects that happen to be in its path. Kind of like that. Now keep in mind that to reset this, just simply jumping forward in your transport controls is not going to be enough. You want to make sure you click on the reset to start button. And now you can hit play and reset to start as many times as you want to preview different results. So there you go. A passive rigid body can be animated to strike other active rigid bodies in this manner. Now you'll notice that this ball never falls down. The reason for this is once again that it's passive and the physics solver has no control over it. That means that if you did want this ball to fall down as opposed to being suspended in the air like so, you need to make sure that you keyframed it falling down or moving in that specific manner. Now, we do have another option where we can let the dynamic system take over at the first point of collision for this ball. And to do that, we'll need to make sure that our activation is actually set to active at collision. It's kind of tricky to do this, so let's see how that works. Let's go back to our physics solver, reset to start, or actually turn off live and then reset to start. That way we ensure that we're in the perfect start state, and turn off the solver. Now go back to the bowling ball, go to the activation properties and change it to active at collision. Keep in mind this can be a little tricky here because the moment a collision occurs, this object is going to become active. This will become really apparent with the setup that we have right now. Let's go back to our physics solver and turn it on and turn on live. Now when we try and play this, you'll notice the animation doesn't work anymore. The reason for that is because a collision has already occurred at the first frame here. I can reset this to start, but my bowling ball is already colliding with my alleyway, and now it's disregarding the keys and making it active, so now the physics solver has control over it. What this basically means is that you want to make sure that your animation is set up perfectly so that whenever you want the switch to occur is where the first point of collision happens. This can be quite tricky in a lot of cases, but here fortunately it's a little bit easy to do. What we need to ensure, or what we need to do, is we need to turn off live at this point, reset to start, and turn the solver off. Now we need to change the keys such that the point of collision occurs whenever the ball hits the pin and not at the starting point when it's already touching the ground. So that basically means we need to do a fake where this first key, we need to take the ball and raise it up a little bit more so it's not touching the ground here. So that's the only way to get around it. What this basically means is that this technique will perform very poorly if your ball had to roll along a specific path, because it would be colliding with the alleyway and it'll become active immediately. So it's kind of tricky in that sense. Your keyframe will definitely define how well this is going to turn out. So with that said, make sure your ball is raised up, override the current key, just press K to override it, and test the animation. There we go. Hit play, and just ensure that the ball is off the ground. Now with that done, go back to the physics solver, turn it on, turn on live, and sometimes you'll get an update issue where once you turn on live, even though a collision hasn't occurred yet, it'll still be active. One of the ways to get around that is to basically turn off live, restart the animation here, and at any point in here just turn on live again. That way it'll force the system to update itself. So now we can stop, reset to start. Okay, it still hasn't updated. Let me try that again. So I'll turn off live, play it, reset to start. Let's turn it back on here. Alright, no go. Something else that can help is basically turn off live, reset to start, turn your solver off, go back to your bowling ball here and change your activation to passive, and then take it back to active again, and that'll force it definitely to update. So let's go back to our solver, turn it on. There we go, much better. So just a slight update issue that you need to take into account. Sometimes playing it back on the transport controls will help fix it, but if all else fails, just reset your physical properties and it'll force it to update. So there we go. Now hit reset, play, and upon collision, the dynamic system takes over and the bowling ball will fall naturally whenever that first strike happens. So active at collision is kind of a little tricky to deal with, but in most cases, or in some cases rather, you might be able to use it to get the results that you want. In this case we used it. Just fling the ball forward, and upon the strike or the first collision that happens, it actually gets pulled down and controlled by the gravitational force of the solver.